Well, thank you for joining us today for the PPM Insights webcast. We are here on the second Thursday of every month at 11 Eastern, and we feature PPM experts with fresh perspectives and expert takes on project and portfolio hot topics. So we will also answer your questions during the Q&A at the end, and as always, you can continue the discussion in the comments at the PPM Insights blog. So this month's featured expert is Emma Price-Terzian. She is a services architect who specializes in CA/PPM, and she uses her functional and technical skills for designing not only efficient processes, but she's also a great champion for user adoption. So we're so happy, Emma, that you are taking some time away from your most recent engagement to spend today with us. Today is a hands-on how-to, and we're looking forward to learning how to work smarter through how Emma's going to show us creating workflows for a lot of actions that are often time-consuming and manual. So when Emma says it's easy once you know how to do it, she means it, and so we're really looking forward to what you're going to be covering today. So Emma, today is kind of a hands-on session, but first, why do you think that capabilities like out-of-the-box workflows are so underutilized?
Thank you, Lisa. So I think that most customers think of creating workflows as some complex area of CA/PPM, and that they generally think it requires technical skills. And while some processes can be very complex, there are a lot of simple and basic functionality of processes that we can create in minutes and really begin utilizing today. You just need to know how to do it, and that's what I am covering. So let's jump right in. Today we're going to walk through the basics needed for creating a workflow and building a workflow in real time. So again, we're going to focus on the basics and getting started today and what we can do today. And we're going to have a live demo as we go through this. So where do I begin? So the very first thing that we'll need to do is thinking of an idea. So workflows start with an idea or a need. How can we improve the business and how can we help our users? So today we're going to go through an example process where we create a process that will send an action item to our PMO office when the project status changes to approved. And they'll need to approve or reject that action item. So we can see here a process flow diagram example of our process that we're going to be creating today. Okay, so the very first piece of it is navigating to the processes. So as an admin in CA/PPM, you would open CA/PPM and you would click the processes in the admin side menu, and that would take you to the process list view. So this slide demonstrates how an admin can get there. And again, or not again, but we will have this slide deck uploaded to our PPM Insights webcast archive. So this will be available for all of you to come back and reference. So as I built out these slides, I wanted to make sure that it was enough illustration that you would be able to use it as your guide to building your own process. So here's where we're going to be starting. And once you're on that process list view, this slide shows you how you can get to the create screen. So you're going to click that new button and you would give your process a name, an ID, and you can change the content source if you'd like, which I will show you in a second here. So let's go ahead and get into the live demo. Okay, so already I was here on the processes page in my instance. So it was again under admin and right here under processes. So I'm going to go ahead and click new, and we're going to call this PMO project approval. And generally when you're giving an ID, as most admins, you should already know that you have a unique identifier for your system. Different customers, it's usually an abbreviation of the customer name. So I'm just going to put CA here, but generally you would put something relevant to your system. and I'll just do CA PMO project approval. And the content source. So it's automatically showing Agile add-in because that's the first thing in the list. But I like to update it to be customer so that we can know that this was something that didn't come in a content pack. This is something that we're building here. So I'm going to change that to customer. And you can add a description as well. So I'm going to go save and continue. And that brings us to our next spot. So we've begun the process of building our process. And I want to talk a little bit about the different components of the workflow. Okay, I know this looks overwhelming, but this should be your cheat sheet as you're going through building the process. So once we've added a process name and a process ID, and we've clicked that save and continue, all of these tabs are available to us in our process. And this slide here will show you the different tabs and give you a quick guide to what each one means. Now, I've added different color variations here to kind of tell you or give you a reference of what we're going to be going over today. So where you see the gray notation, it's going to be something that's a little more advanced and we're not going to be covering today because, again, we want to focus on the basics and we want to get you started today. Okay, and we're going to continue to reference this image here as we go through, so you can know exactly where we are within the tabs. So the very first spot is going to be the objects and defining a start condition. So I'm going to go here to the objects, and before we get into the live demo again, I just want to give you a high level. If your process is going to be running at an object level, like an idea or a project, you have to define that object. So again, if you want, for example, the process to send an action item to an idea creator when a checkbox is checked, you need to actually link your process to the idea object. So in our example, since we're sending the PMO office an action item, when the project status changes, we're going to link to the project object. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so when we click Save and Continue, it automatically took us to the next page, which was our object page. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add Primary Object. And I'll drop this down, and I'm going to search for our project object. So the object key is something that's automatically populated, so it's this project for now, but you can actually change this and shorten it. And just do PROJ or PRJ or something shorter, which is a useful tip when you're running on a custom object that could be 4 words long. And it's just helpful whenever you have character limits later on. But this project is not that long, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it as this project. And I'll click Save and Return. And we can see here that our object has been defined now. Okay, so now back to our slides. We're going to talk about our start conditions now. And again, we can see here the tab it's the next tab over from objects, so it's the start options. And it's important to give you a start condition or give the process a start condition because otherwise it's only going to start on demand. And that's when I seek it out individually and I start it individually. So the example that we have on the page here is showing that when the idea manager is updated. So when the idea manager does not equal the previous value. And in our process, we're going to go ahead and give it a start condition. So I'm going to click the start options. So first thing I will do, I'm going to say it's going to auto start because on demand, again, that is me seeking it out to start it. So I'm going to auto start. And I have 3 options. I can say on create, on update, on create and update. And I can give different conditions, but really we just need on update. And that means when a certain field is updated, this is going to trigger. So I'm going to go ahead and click save because here it says please save first to set the condition. So I saved, and now I can see how this is a hyperlink now. So I can set the condition. So our condition is going to be when our status changes to approved. So I'm going to drop down here, and object, we want project, since it's the project status, and we're going to say attribute value, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of start typing here. That makes it a little easier to search for it. So status, so project status equals, and we just need that constant of approved. Okay, so we've built our condition up here, and then I click the add button. So that will take it down here into our evaluated expression. So you can see here, project status equals approved. And now I also want to add to this that the previous value of project status was not approved. And that will really make sure that our process only kicks off when we just updated the status to approved. So I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to check the radio button beside previous attribute value. So we're going to leave project there, and we're going to select previous attribute value. And again, I'm just going to start typing. So there's status, and I'll say does not equal approved. Now, before I try to add this, there's one last thing I need to do. I need to come up here and say if this is an and or an or. And I only need to do this whenever I already have something down here in my expression. Otherwise, when we first did this first expression, we just left this blank. So I'm going to add this as an and. So add that down. So now we can see our process is going to start when our project status is approved and the previous value does not equal approved. And we'll save and return. And now we have a start condition. So after we've defined when our process starts, we can start building on building out our steps of our process. So this slide here shows the 3 tabs that we need to reference when we're talking about our steps. So we've got the start step, we've got steps, which can be as many steps in there as you'd like, and then the finish step. Both the start step and the finish step are required. So to take a process from beginning to end, we have to define a series of steps. And like I was saying, the step action is made up of the start step, all of the steps in between, and the finish step. And we have a process flow example here to kind of show you the different steps that are happening in between. So this is actually a timesheet process and the flow of how that timesheet process goes. But our process, we're going to make it a little simpler. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our 3 steps. So today we're going to be creating 3 steps, and that's outside of our start step and our finish step. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go to the Steps tab, and I'm going to click New Step. Okay, so our first step would be sending an action item to the PMO office. So I'm going to say PMO approval. And I'll give it a unique ID. And then I'm just going to click Save and Create New. And now I can create my next one. So the next step would be if the PMO office approves our action item, then we would set our work status to be approved. So I'm going to say Set Work Status to Approved. Okay, and then we're going to do one more. So if our PMO office rejects our action item, we would set our work status to Rejected. So we're going to say Set Work Status to Rejected. Okay, and I'm going to click Save because I don't need to create any more. So clicking Save, it automatically took me inside the step that I had just created, but I just want to return here so I can see all of the steps. So again, here I am on the Steps tab, and I can see the 3 steps that I just created, which now that sets us up perfectly to talk about step actions. So our step actions can be 5 different actions. So you can do a manual action and a system action, which we'll talk about more in depth. And then we also have triggering a job, a custom script, or triggering another process, which would be called a sub-process. And this is just an example here showing what we did with creating the new step and naming our step. Okay, so now let's talk about our workflow actions. And the first one that we're going to talk about is a manual action. So a manual action sends action items to resources, groups, roles, or profiles. And the user that it sends the action to must act on the action item for the process to continue. And I will show you how to add that piece of it as well. So we're going to go ahead and create a manual action. And our manual action is going to be in that PMO approval because, again, manual actions are sending that action item. So we're going to go ahead back into the PMO approval, and I'm going to click New as an action. So you can see here the screenshot is the same. I'm going to click Manual Action, and let's name this Send AI to PMO. And AI is short for action item. Okay, so for building an action item, you have a lot of different options. So there's a lot of different selections that an action item could have. And for our example, we just want the approved and the rejected. So when the action item goes to a user with a PMO, they would have the options to approve the action item or reject it. But again, there are so many other options where if you're waiting for a project manager to complete an action, they would just need to select done. And you're waiting for them to select done, or, so there's a lot of different ways to use these actions. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to, or put the approved and rejected over in my selected column. And then I'm going to build my action item message. And if you see these binoculars, we're going to go ahead and use those as we're building this. But these add dynamic variables. So for example, the project name, this is how we actually add the project name that the process is running on. So I will show you. We're going to say PMO approval needed for project. And I'm going to put the unique ID for the project here. And this, again, this is dynamic. So I'm going to go ahead and browse. And I know that it's called investment ID. So I'm going to scroll down here. And there it is. So I'm going to check that. And we'll click Add. So now if I highlight this and scroll over, you can see here the variable that was defined. So no matter what project this action item or this process is running on, the PMO will see the unique project code for that process. So again, this is just a subject line. So now we're going to add a body to our message, and we'll say, we'll say PMO approval is needed for the following project. Please approve or reject this action item. Okay, and I like to add a little bit of additional information in those variables. So let's do project ID first, and we already know what the variable is for that. So we can actually just kind of highlight this and copy it. And we'll paste it down there. That saves us a little bit of time. And then I'm going to do project name as our next one. And so we'll do the binoculars here. So this binocular belongs to the description field. And my little hint is I like to open up the search on the entire web browser, and that helps me find it a little faster because there's not a filter option here. And there it is. So there's investment name, and I'll select that and click add. And then let's also add the project manager, because sometimes that information is useful as well. And there's the manager, and we'll click add. Okay. And then the last piece of this that we want to talk about is the assignees. So there are several different options for assigning or set who you would send the action item to. So the first one is the object roles. So this is kind of like the project manager, and it could be managers of if you have a hierarchy of projects, it could be your managers of your children projects or your parent projects. It could be any participant or the staff that's on your project. But what we want to concern ourselves with today is the resource fields. So this is also within this project, and we want to find the people who are defined as the project management office on this project. And again, just a quick overview, there's also the system roles. So anyone who is defined as an architect could get it. You could send it to a specific group, or you could send it to a specific resource as well. But for our example, we just want the PMO. So I will click add. And some other options here, if I wanted this action item to be available in another step, I could check that. But since we're keeping it pretty simple, we don't need that, so we're not going to check it. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Return. And I'm going to go back here. So we've just created our manual action. So our next two actions are going to be system actions. So a system action is the ability to set field values, which is what we're going to be doing, or to lock or unlock fields, or you can copy from template, and there's a lot of different options. So there's attribute setters, and there's the definition of that there, and system operations as well. So for our process, if the PMO approves their action item, we're going to use a system action to set work status to approved, and if they reject our action item, we're going to set work status to be rejected. So let's go ahead and build this. Okay, so I'm going to save and return out of our PMO approval. So I'm back on the steps list view that we've got here, and I'm going to go right into our set work status to approved. And I'm going to click new, and I'm going to change it to system action. I'm going to click next. And I'm just going to do a little copy and paste to save me some typing. Okay, so just a note, I kind of changed up how I was naming the action because every ID within the process has to be unique. So if I did the exact same name or ID that I'm trying to do in the step action, I would get an error. So that's why I just did CA status approved. And so we've got our object set to this project. And you can see here there are a lot of different actions. So what we want to do is set work status. I'm going to go ahead and browse, and this one is approved. And I'm going to click Save and Return. And now let's go to our set work status to rejected. And same thing, new action, system action. We're going to just copy this for a little bit of ease of use. Okay, and then we're going to say set work status. And again, it seems like I'm moving very fast there because I'm typing. And that's kind of the quick way to get to what you're looking for instead of having to scroll the whole time. And so let's change this to rejected. And so we've created our system action. We'll do save and return. And let's return again. So here we are again in our steps. And I'm going to go back here to the slide deck just to talk about the other three options as well. So the system action and the manual action are our basics. But I just want to mention that there are 3 other types of actions that we'll not be discussing today. And they're a little more advanced, and again, we're going to focus on getting you up and running with the basics. So the 3 other options are triggering a job, running a custom script, as well as triggering a sub-process. And again, these are more advanced, but I've included them here in the slide deck just for visibility into additional learning once we've mastered the basics. And this slide here shows additional information for the sub-process action. Okay, so now we're going to talk about splits and joins. So we've created our steps. We've added step actions, so what our step is going to be doing. And now we need to tell our process where are our steps going. Because right now they're all independent. So enter our process flow splits, and these are also known as postconditions. And there are 4 different types of postconditions, but today we're going to focus on the 2 that are most used and the simplistic conditions. So that's a serial split and a decision point split. So a serial split is when one step goes to the next step only after the predecessor step completes. So it's kind of like the one-to-one relationship. And then the decision point is a choice in the workflow where several branches can execute on that decision. So we're going to have both serial and decision points in our process. So let's go ahead and add them. And again, the parallel split and the multi-choice I've added here just for that additional learning later on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead into our PMO approval. And this is where we're going to have a decision point. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll change this to decision point. And I'm going to click Save. And I'm going to click New here. So we're going to have 2 different paths coming out of this. And it's going to be, if the action item is approved, go one path. If it's rejected, go the other path. So let's go ahead and get into building our condition. And this is very similar to what we saw when we were building our condition in the start condition. But now we have this option here for the action item. So the action item that we just set within this step is available. And if I had marked this to be available for other steps, this is where it would show up and I could use it in other steps as well. So the field, I like to use number of assignees with status approved or rejected because I've found that to be the most consistent for giving me the results that I want. But you can try any of these options to fit whatever needs you need. So I'm going to say number of assignees with a status approved. And for the purposes of my process, I think that it should only take one person to approve the action item. I don't need everyone to approve it. So I'm going to say it's greater or equal to 1. And that just means one person needs to approve it. If 2 people approve it, great, we can still move forward, but I just need one person. So I'm going to click Add and Save and Return. And then I will say go to our set work status to approved. Okay, so now I'm going to build the condition for our rejection. So we're going to again select that action item. And when the number of assignees with a status of rejected is greater or equal to 1, I'm going to click that. Then we're going to go to our rejected step. All right, so we have just created a decision point. So the process will wait until one of these conditions are met, and then it will move forward. So I'm going to click Save and Return. And now we're going to talk about serial splits, which again is kind of like that one-to-one relationship in this process world. So I'm going to go into our set work status to approved, and I need to tell our step where to go, and we're just going to have it go to the finish step. So once it finishes setting the work status, it's just going to go to finish, and that is the perfect example for our serial split type. I'm going to click Save and Return, and we're going to do the same thing to our rejected one. Go to the finish step, and it's a serial split. So that is the splits, but we also need to talk about joins. So we're creating these splits in our system, but we also need to add joins or preconditions so that our process knows how to interpret incoming steps. So a join is described as the merging of two or more steps that are incoming, and there are 6 different choices. But today we're only going to focus on 2, which is the no join needed or the merge, which these are the 2 that match up to interpreting our 2 splits that we've just added. So we've split our process, and now we need to join it back together because we can only have one path end in the end of our process. So let's go ahead and add our preconditions now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go into our set work status to approved. And you can use this referring steps as kind of your guiding line. So we only have one step coming in here. So we don't need a precondition. So this is the no condition needed, the join type of none. Save and return. And it's going to be the same thing here with our rejected. There's one step coming in, so we don't really need a join type there. But we do have a split happening in our process. And you saw that both the approved and the rejected are going to the finish step, so that's where we're having that merge happen. So I'm going to go here to the finish step, and I'm going to select merge. So a merge is a type of join where multiple paths are converging into a single thread. So once the path, one path enters this step, we don't wait for any other path to come in. And like if we wanted to wait for another path to come in, that would actually be more like our multiple choice options, which are a little more advanced. And again, we're just focusing on the basics. So with the merge, after one path enters and activates the sequence in this step, no other path can come in and reactivate it. And this is why it's a perfect join type for our decision points. So I'm just going to click save here. And let's jump back here. And we're going to talk about our process flow. So we've added our splits and our joins and our steps, and we kind of just need to see how all of this is shaping up. So a process flow diagram is a perfect way to see how your entire process is flowing. And we've added some additional information here for your own purposes when you're building your own processes. So let's go ahead and take a look at our process flow. Okay, it's looking pretty good, but there's something off with it, right? So we can see that our start step is just kind of over there floating. And we did this on purpose, just for this example, so that we can see how the process flow can benefit us in seeing how all of our steps are connected. Because, you know, you're doing all this work. Sometimes it's very easy to forget, did I connect this? Is this going to the right place? So from here, I can actually directly click on that step, and it'll take me right into the step conditions. So I can see here, okay, we just need our start step to go to that PMO approval. And I'm going to click add. And we don't have any preconditions coming in. This isn't a decision point, so we're going to leave that as serial. And I'm going to click save. And now let's go back to our process flow. And that looks a lot better. And we've expanded our process flow so that we can see the decision point and we can see the merge. So you can see it has that one-to-one relationship that if I'm creating a decision point, I also need to close it eventually. Otherwise, it's going to throw this process error. So your decision points need to equal your number of merge points. And that's a little tip to keep your eye out for, because in a lot of very complicated processes where you have a lot of decision points, the process will throw errors if we do not see the same number of merging happening. Okay. So now that we're satisfied with how our process is flowing, we're going to go ahead and validate our process and all of the steps from the process validation page. So activating the process is setting it active for testing and for usage in the system. So this slide shows the screenshots for future reference when all of you guys are validating your processes. So let's go ahead and validate ours. And we're going to click this validation tab. And several different ways of doing it. I can check all of the boxes. I can just validate one step if I'm just curious about one step. And here you can see the color coding. So on that slide where I grazed over it with just the different color coding, that's what this is in reference to. So you can see the process as a whole is not validated. But I think it's easiest to just go ahead and click this button here where it says validate all and activate. And that just sets our entire process as active. And then I also want to note that you as the creator, you have the security rights to kick off your process, but you'll need to give others direct auto start access unless your organization has that everyone has the global process start right. In that case, you wouldn't have to worry about it. But if you do have a stricter security model, you would want to go to the access to this process, and you can do it by group, by OBS unit, by resources, by full view. And again, it would be, you'd want to give them the auto start or the start if you want them to be able to do it on demand. Okay, and I know that was a lot of information, and we went through it pretty quickly, but I just want to open up the floor now for any Q&A.
Great, thank you, Emma. And this is all out-of-the-box functionality, right? This is one of those things that can be mastered relatively easily from the get-go. There's no customization involved, correct?
Correct, yep, correct.
All right, so we've got two questions for you so far. The first question is it possible that one user approves and another rejects? So it sounds like, what if there's a conflict? You've chosen more than one person for that approval process and they're not agreeing with each other.
So that would just kind of depend on how you're setting up your post condition. Like in the example that we've done today, my process was only waiting for one response. So as soon as that first response is coming in, it would move on. But let's say that that you have a group of 5 people and you're waiting for all of the responses. You could wait for a majority to move on, or you could have it be that as soon as one person rejects it, it's completely rejected. So it's really all about how you set up those post conditions. Does that answer the question, or do they need more information?
I believe that answers the question. The next question is, would you please talk on escalation on the action items step? How long should we wait for the approval before sending it to escalation? Okay, good question. So we didn't speak to the escalations, but kind of let me pull that up so we can give reference to people who aren't familiar with it. So since we're validated, we can't add anything, but there's this section right here for escalations. And actually, we should be in the PMO approval. So if we had not received a response, and this is what the question is referring to, if we had not received any kind of response here from the action item, we can set an escalation rule where you resend the action item, or you kind of say, help, we need to figure out what's going on here. And I think that question, how long should you actually wait, is really that's a business question, to be honest. So the tool is here to help you in your business, and it's here to help facilitate the business processes that you have set up. It's not here to be the business process. So it's kind of like how often or how quickly do you need to know?
I mean, I would suggest maybe a week, that you'd give them a week, but it's really just how time sensitive is this action item? How quickly do you need the turnaround? It's more of a business question.
Okay, good point. Because yeah, that's absolutely it's absolutely one of those things that's going to vary from company to company.
Yeah, and from process to process as well, because you know one process could be need a quicker turnaround than another process as well.
Okay, next question. For your example, how long would that have taken if you were just doing it and not explaining it?
So I did an example one right before the call, just to make sure that I was fresh with everything. It took me 10 minutes.
Wow, that's pretty impressively quick there, Emma. I think we have a follow-up question here. Well, the condition was if one or more users approve. Does that really mean that only one can approve and the operator should be equal to 1 or greater than 0? I can also copy that to your IM if you want to read that.
Yeah, ping that to my IM. the last part. The last part.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the first part of that
question.
Okay, so the condition was that one or more users approve, and yes, that means that as soon as one person approves, even if we're sending it to 5 people, the process will move forward. And then the operator should be equal to 1 or greater than 0. I don't know that I understand the last piece of it, but you could have the operator be equal to 1 if you're just waiting on one person, if you just want one person. But I like to just cover my bases, so I chose greater or equal to 1. In the strange case that 2 people act on it at the exact same time, and I don't want to just be waiting on, I don't want my condition to be waiting on 1 when 2 people simultaneously acted on it. So it's just me being overcautious whenever I'm doing the greater than 1. Does that actually answer what was being asked?
I believe so, but we'll wait for any follow-up question to that. So we do have another question. Should the SMTP email server be on for the notification/action item to send from processes?
Yes, it should be. So there's, so you would need to have it populated in the CSA for emails to be sent. Now, the user could actually get the action item from their organizer. So that still exists here. So if I go to my organizer, I can see the action items or any action items that have come into me. So they'll still exist in the CAPPM system, but to receive an email for them, you would definitely need to have the server turned on or the email server populated. And then you would also need the users to have their email settings. So if I go here to account settings, in my notifications, I would also need to have, for processes, I would need to have the email checked there. Or for if you have the global setting for the entire system as well, it would need to be checked there. The only way to kind of get around this notification thing is if you were doing an email in a custom script and you weren't looking at if the notifications were set.
Okay, great. And we will wait for any follow-up question to that if that wasn't clear. Okay. The other thing that I want to remind people is that you can absolutely continue this conversation in the communities at the PPM Insights blog. Emma, we do have another question. Where would a process designer find the process workflow documentation, including operator conditions?
I'm going to actually have a follow-up on that. So are we looking for you're trying to export out all of the custom processes, or do you want some kind of documentation on how the build process is?
Okay. Asking for some clarification here.
Yeah.
So, can you answer both of those while we're waiting for the follow-up?
Yeah, I could.
Okay.
As far as knowing the custom processes that are in the system and kind of trying to export out that data, it is a little limited, and that's kind of why I would say, let me return out of here to our process list view. That's why I would say that you want to kind of preface your processes with a certain name. Like you can see all of mine, I've put my initials in there. So you could kind of figure out what you have in the system that way, and then you would need to really use the process flow to actually get the information out of there. But outside of that and outside of querying the database, there's not much in getting out your custom processes. And then for the other side of the question, there's a lot of great, and I actually have this pulled up that I can pull it over. There's a lot of great information out there in our DocOps site. And I'm going to go to the top here. Oh, it logged me out.
So I think this does answer what you're just showing in DocOps does show. We do have a follow-up to that, which was how to build processes to know what's available.
Yeah, yep. So, I mean, everything in this process is, or everything that I've done in this presentation is definitely those basic level pieces of it, doing easy decision points and merging that information in. So I think if you kind of follow that, it will really help teach you the inner workings of the process and everything that you need to have configured, you know, the basic bare bones configured. And here in DocOps, it also has, you know, the bare bones, and it has all the additional information. So here, like, as I even refer to the process flows and joins, because here they have a great way of explaining all of the different stuff and additional information that, you know, I couldn't just put a slide of a bunch of text in there as well. So I would say utilize DocOps. It is amazing. It's my best friend. Because this system is, you know, CAPPM is such an amazing tool, and there are so many different areas of it.
Great. And yes, it is a fantastic resource. We do have a question about whether there's anything in the works about being able to customize due dates on action items generated in a process. So the default setting in the action item object is pretty limited, and it is a universal default. I think that might be, Emma, other than if there's something existing or you have a timely tip for us, this is really kind of a product roadmap question that we are not really in a position to answer that. That would be something for the product development team. And there certainly is a lot on the roadmap, but unfortunately we're not really authorized to get into what that might be here.
Correct, and I don't have a timely tip, as you would say, for getting around that.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Emma. That's some. We've got. I think you already answered the question. Where can I learn more about how to create workflows? That would be DocOps, probably the best resource for that.
Yeah, DocOps is amazing. And rewatch this PPM Insights as well.
There you go. And we did have a question about whether or not a recording would be available. And yes, we do post it to the PPM Insights archive. And that usually happens within 24 hours, if not sooner. So you'll have access to both the deck and to the recording. I do have one more question for you, Emma, and that is there any customization or special permissions I need to do this?
So you would need to have admin access to the, and I don't know the exact security right off the top of my head. You know, that I can go take a look. So there are different, if you're an admin in your system, there's different process rights. Here it is, process access. So this, you'd need to have this specific security right, and this is what allows you to have access to the processes page in the admin side of the tool.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, we are quickly running out of time here, so and questions. So thank you, Emma, so much for joining us today. And for those of you joining us as listeners, be sure to follow her on Twitter at EM3AC8, and then also check out the people. What's that?
I should have made that easier.
I know. You know, you're going to really have to change that Twitter handle.
Probably.
And then also, of course, check out the PPM Insights blog where you can continue today's conversation in the comments. We always encourage you to check out the very active CA-PPM community at communities.ca.com. It's a great resource for getting advice and insights from your fellow users, experts from across CA like Emma. Plus, you'll find the PPM Insights webcast archive, so you can listen to the other recordings that we have, download the presentations, and check out some similar topics. So thank you again for joining us today. Join us again next month, second Thursday, for another PPM Insights topic, and have a great rest of the week, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.